Hello, everybody. This is Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5, broadcasting out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. But also, we are on the UPRN talkradio.com website. You can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Roku. And I invite you to check out my YouTube station at Bart Sharp -1. Become a subscriber would really delight me. And today, both KiaRa and I are wearing red. And if you are in a Mary Magdalene community, which the big one that we all know and love is in Southwest France. But to explain a little bit about my own personal interpretation, everybody may have a different interpretation. It's great stuff to talk over coffee. But to me, this red is not, when you think of red, you think of either passionate, romantic feelings or on the vice versa, anger. But this is kind of neither. This is a different tone of red that has passion, that has an expression of an exuberant beauty that's coming out, almost like looking at a red rose that inspires, that opens. And that, I think, is what more Mary Magdalene is about. But enough about colors. Let's bring on our host, KiaRa Santos from Brazil, of all places, although she's lived everywhere. I met her in France. How you doing, KiaRa?
Hi, Bart. Thank you for welcoming me on. Yeah, just tuning into that red frequency and noticing the roses that are here with us today as well, and that red hue. And yeah, really connecting as well when you brought up the red, feeling into the chakra system that I relate as well, these colors too, and feeling that red really holds us in the root and in our embodiment and connection to the earth. So I love that as well.
It is. And when we think of Mary Magdalene, that's one of the first images I always get is bare feet rooted into the ground. But as a friend of mine, Alethea Pistis Sophia says, every step is taken in love is part of her discipline. And whether that be on a rocky road or a flat road, every step has that type of consciousness that is rooted deep in the earth and is grounded and brings about a sensuality to her. Now, KiaRa's website is rosetemple.org. Am I getting that right?
Yes, exactly.
All right. I just wanted to bring that out. rosetemple.org. I'll say it several times during the show. You teach tours, you teach classes, you're a tour guide in France and other places. Always seems like you're all over the world when I catch up with you, that you travel a lot. Right now you're in Brazil, where your home is. In today's topic, we have a great topic, I think, and that would be uncovering sacred union, healing the feminine and masculine within. So when you think about that, healing the feminine and masculine within, it's not a religious journey. This is not following the path of spiritual masters as a religion. And it's more of a personal journey. You could say it's a spiritual journey, but when we think about spiritual, that is something that you can't see. It's unseen. It's something internal. Some people say it's beyond us. But as you speak about it, it's within. And how do you approach that of finding that inner journey to be both in masculine and feminine.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for asking about the inner reflection of it, because I really feel that it is a journey of understanding that we have both of these polarities within ourselves, regardless of our gender or our identification externally or biologically. These are really principles that we hold inside of ourselves, and there's different qualities that they each maintain, the masculine being more of that doing and action and movement forward and creating structure, containment, and holding, and the feminine being more in that frequency of receptivity, of creation, of being a vessel, of inspiration, of flow. And when I look at those two principles in life, you can really carve out a whole path of how you will approach things based on finding balance between them both. So
Yeah,
that really reflects the day-to-day life.
they do. There's so many qualities, and one that pops up to me first is when you're over dominant in the masculine, you're very much in the mental facilities. You're in your head, you're into rationales and justifications. Whereas the feminine, that's not always the case. You're into experiencing it from your whole body.
Definitely. And I would say as well from the heart and the emotions. And yeah, thank you for bringing in that word as well of dominance, because I think that's a big subject of where the lack of balance starts to come in, when there is this dominance of the masculine, which can sometimes be a little more loud. And I'd say the feminine can be a bit more of a whisper. And so if you're in one room and something is shouting and something is whispering, what are you going to hear and feel more of, right? There's the masculine. And so that can be a little bit more abrasive. And I'd say to get in touch with the feminine is sometimes more of that pathway of entering the mystery and
Yeah.
learning to really listen to the
How does
subtlety.
how does your feminine voice start to show up in your life? Because I know this is a process with everybody. I know when my intuition and feminine side started to speak to me, it it had a certain quality to it. Uh, and I think most people, because I'm from more America, you're from more Brazil and a more worldwide perspective, but I can easily say that most Americans are really much in their heads. They're always trying to rationale and intellectualize and keep it at that level. But somewhere that voice starts to show up. That is feminine.
Mhm.
What does that feel like to you? What's been your process? What have you seen in others, how they do it?
Yeah, well, I think that probably one of the main things that comes up when you ask that is number one, slowing down. And I think that we really need to choose to pause to be able to listen and to be able to shift out of these perhaps even repetitive patterns of doing or thinking or really operating from the top down instead of from the bottom up, which I think has a lot more wisdom to offer us. And so for me in my journey, that began with meditation and with beginning to find stillness. And a lot of wisdom came through that silence. That wasn't me creating it or thinking it or making it happen, but allowing it to come through and guide me. I'd say that's probably the anchor point.
Yeah.
And yeah, the evolution kept going from there.
Yeah, it is. It is an evolution. Uh, for me, I had done a lot of Al-Anon. That would be a sister program to Alcoholics Anonymous. And what was happening there was once I got some of those emotions resolved through the program, a voice that was very slow and gentle would start to come up in my gut. And then it would come up as a thought or an idea in my head. And it felt very different from all my mental thoughts. And that was kind of a beginning of it.
Mhm.
That there was a voice, very unique voice, one that hadn't been there all my life, but suddenly there it was. It was a lot wiser in general.
Yeah, I love the quality that you're sharing of kind of the different voices, because I think sometimes that is one thing that's hard to discern on the path, is what is my intuition saying and what is my mind saying. And I think that learning to decipher that comes with the practice of coming again and again to the soma, to the body, and learning to feel into the sensations, learning to feel into, if you're a woman, from your womb, what is really coming from a deeper place, or from your belly or your gut, as you said, as a man, and really tuning into the resonance that we feel when perhaps that voice is giving you guidance. How is it resonating through your whole body, not just from the mind? How is it
Yeah.
feeling?
You call it womb wisdom. Other people call it that too, but that seems to be what you're really, a lot of your focus is on, of getting it there. And how, can you give people any recommendations on how they can start to find that inside of themselves?
Tuning into this womb wisdom in particular? Is
Yeah.
that what you? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, if I'm talking from the framework as a woman, then I think that really involves getting in touch with our womb itself as a cyclical part of our body that really has its own rhythm and its way of listening and its way of attuning. And regardless of what life stage you're in, I feel that women are really attuned to the lunar cycles. So we're really attuned to that moon energy. And so even if you've stopped cycling, you're still coming into these cycles with the moon that we're moving through 4 times a month, right? A month is a month. And connecting back to the lunar frequency. And so starting with getting curious, I think, to what she has to say, whether that's through a meditation and holding your womb, or just beginning to attune to that in your body. Sorry, my throat's a little scratchy. I think that that's one of the gateways.
Yeah. Yeah, you work with a variety of people with this, and a lot of women. In fact, that's what your main focus is women. Uh, how do you approach it when people come to you and they say, God, I've just had trauma most of my life, and can you help me?
Well, one thing I'll say is that I tend to work in community and to begin to build this body of work through reclaiming sacred sisterhood and community of like-minded people, where we start to first build safety and connection, and whether that's directly with me or with the sisters that are involved in the space, just starting to open up to, okay, what are the wounds that were there from the feminine? What are the wounds that were there from the masculine? And what really needs to be felt here? And I think we spoke about emotion at some point earlier. That's also a really big gateway to discovering the truth within ourselves, is when we don't suppress or repress our emotions, but we allow them to start to come through and give us clues as to something that might be hidden underneath the pain that's just needing to be heard or felt. And so for me, it's really blending. The pathway is blending for me psychology with spirituality, and really learning through our trauma. That's been a big part of my life, is starting pretty early on to do trauma work, shadow work, going into these early imprints that we receive and learning how they become our conditioned beliefs and our conditioned perceptions of reality, and how that starts to make us reactive versus feeling spaciousness to drop into that silence, to drop into that listening, to be able to respond to life. and no longer be reacting and feeling perhaps a victim of our story, but taking back the power through that process and recognizing that we are the authors of our life and that we get to create what we want through that presence, you know. But when there's so much trauma, we start to feel like there's no choice here in each moment. There's no choice. I need to do this thing. I need to do that. And it goes up to the mind because it's too painful to feel and to be in the body.
And also a quality with that is you're probably repeating the same things that your traumatized experiences have learned. It's almost like you're in that hamster wheel. You're going down a very narrow path where there's few options because the traumas have trained you that way.
Yeah.
And so when you meet somebody like that, you know, part of what my guess is, I didn't read this about you, but I'll just throw it out there, is that your womb is almost as much of a teacher as any part of your body when you're with somebody that is in that trauma response.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, yeah, my womb and my soma and empathy and the heart, it's all learning to work together. You know, in part of what I teach, we work with the different chakras and the roses and understanding how all of our chakras need to come together, which includes our body parts. So our womb and our heart and our mind, how can they start to operate in coherence instead of feeling like one's taking us in this direction and the other one's telling us that. And then we just start to feel like, I'm not sure what's true anymore, you know? And so when we speak about this, I really feel that our body is the technology and that it's something that we have here to access something like the truth that is much greater than, you know, the technological advances that are happening in modern society. The body is first and foremost the greatest technology we have. So we need to really get on board with what our body is telling us and has the capacity to teach us, especially in this modern world, which, you know, you could say the technology is almost representing the masculine and nature is representing the feminine. So how are we going to find the balance as there's so much growing in technological advances right now? Is coming back to the body, coming back to our senses, and coming back to our inner knowing. And I think that that's really important, especially for today's youth. I want to just name that.
That's so good. You know, it brings up just so many points. I mean, I think about before I got into consciousness work, when I would listen to people who were in trauma, it's almost like when they're in trauma, they hated it. And there was this window that you could see inside of them that was ready to step across to this other side. And you could start to see that hope that while they're going to do something daring, they're going to, you know, step away from that relationship or become sober or, you know, start learning why they're so angry or aggressive. And then you might see them a week later and they're back in the same pattern. It's just interesting how we get pulled right back into it unless we find something that gives us a grounding hope, a teacher or a friendship or something, or maybe it's a special book that starts to give us that path to security, that we can find that path to security. And you know, I love your quote that you're saying the body is the best technology. And I totally agree with you. In this time when so much change is happening, that we really need the masculine and feminine, the whole. And you know, when I think about AI and all the possibilities that it brings, some of them are scary. And that wants me to jump into a trauma response. Almost like oh, it's scary, so I have to be living a life with less alternatives, living a life that jumps into the victim patterns that I once played. That to me is how it works. But the body technology, learning how to use that and how to manage that is so crucial. We start to find answers with that.
Yeah, and I feel like with what you're sharing, it touches into kind of world themes. And if we look at what's happening on our planet right now, even entering January 2026, there is a lot of distortion of the masculine, which I would name as this quality of violence. And that's another thing that happens when these two principles get out of balance is we go into this anger, this violence, this reactivity, this dominance, and trying to, well, it's an abuse of power ultimately, right?
Yes.
And I think that is what we are needing right now on our planet is the restoration of this balance with the feminine being honored. And that includes our bodies, that includes the earth, and that includes our emotions and our inner child, right? If we want to go all the levels in.
I agree. The inner child is a big part of starting to find your own internal security with all of that. And one thing you did not mention there, which you said also well, is when people go into trauma or they feel like there's a problem that they have to face, they want to control and dominate over it as the solution. If I show enough power and bring enough masculine force into this, and that's a very intellectual perspective, I will create safety again. But the feminine doesn't work that way. It has a different point of view. Safety is not outside of ourselves. Safety is internal. What does that reflect? What comes up for you when I say that safety is internal? How do you get that on your feminine side?
I feel somatically it's this kind of withdrawal within and finding that center where peace arises from ultimately. And when we can be in touch with that center, that we don't need to change something out there to be okay. But we're starting to actually bring that more into the world from this inner place of calm.
Indeed. And it's funny, a lot of times the problems that we thought we had seem to not be there, in my opinion, when we find that place inside.
Yes, definitely. I think that speaks to how much is really a reflection outside, and that's why I say, part of our topic today was the masculine and feminine within, because everything is inside of us and it's being reflected out there. And all of this is the mirrors for us to learn from in our journey and to really understand how we relate to it, and coming back to this topic of trauma too, I just wanted to say, it all comes down to our earliest imprints, and who our earliest imprints usually are our parents or your primary caregivers, which, the majority of the case would probably be a masculine and a feminine figure, perhaps not in some cases, but if that is, those are your first imprints of what masculine and feminine is externally, and then that becomes our internalized version of how we learn to relate to them, right? So if you have a father who's like always overworking and doing and doing and doing until he's burnt out, then your inner masculine's like, okay, those are the qualities I'm meant to take on, and this is how we operate, right? Yeah. And so we start to perceive what's external and operate through that lens as we grow. But it's not a fixed case, and that's the part of the work that I love to get into is, okay, what are the things we've taken on that are perhaps not serving us anymore to get to the life that we want? that are ready to be released. And I think that we've gone through a huge, and we're still in it, a huge time of shedding through this year of the snake and all of these themes of, okay, what's ready to be released in our lives, old constructs falling apart, and we're in a time of renewal right now. You know, a lot of people are speaking of the numerology of this year being the year one, the new beginnings, initiations. And at the same time, if we look at the lunar calendar, we're not there yet. We still have the new moon of February 17th, which is also the Chinese New Year, where we're actually starting more of an energetic new year. So a lot of people are still feeling like nothing is new and ready yet. We're still in a huge deconstruction phase. And I think you can really see that in the world right now. Everything's kind of in this falling apart phase. And what that brings, you know, to not see that from the eyes of the victim, but to say, okay, what are the new opportunities that are here for us right now to reinvent ourselves and to create the new reality we really want, because it's that time. And I think that that's what the world's ready for.
It sounds like you're talking about hope, and that where does the hope come from when we're connected and we have the power of the earth and the cosmos, the universe, all working in kind of a unity within us, synchronicity. To me, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like when I am connected with my womb, I connect with the earth. And all of that stuff becomes more apparent. It's all together.
And when we look at the earth, we see all of the metaphors of life, right? All of the cycles that we have to go through and that are inevitable. And she doesn't resist the winter. She doesn't resist the fall, the shedding of all the leaves. It's like, this is what's necessary for the next thing to come. And it's a full surrender into that. And I think that's another aspect of the feminine way that has kind of been lost in the Western world, where there's this expectation that everything's meant to be linear and going in this one trajectory, and that there's not going to be cycles that we need to go through and honor. And we've lost those thresholds as well of honoring the change.
Yeah, I do get that so much. And the masculine always wants to, when it's a wounded masculine, it wants to control and dominate and fix it. What, you know, the feminine hasn't resolved. And, you know, it's a really interesting, when we think about 2,000 years ago, you know, Yeshua left us with a message, or Jesus, and Mary Magdalene left with us messages. And of course, I don't really think those messages got conveyed very clearly. And we went into this very masculine cycle coming out of all of that. And that's kind of reflective about what's going on today. We're trying to correct that misdirection that happened 1,700 years ago or something, when the Roman Catholics said, well, we're going to create a great church, and it's not going to be exactly the Church of Jesus, but you're going to love it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you're speaking of the Council of Nicaea 325.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this moment that changed history and changed, you know, if we're speaking of America or certain countries where Christianity and Catholicism have become dominant, it shaped the psyche of humanity, right? To think that God was a man, and that even that Yeshua didn't have a beloved, and that this template of the man and women coming together was torn apart through that process. And if you want to go into that a little bit more, I'm happy to share.
Yeah, let's do. You think about what that would be for you, and I'm going to let everybody know that you are listening to Becoming Quantum Conscious. My name is Bart Sharp, and our guest today is KiaRa Santos, and you can find her at rosetemple.org. Also, this is United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. So, I mean, to me, this is a big comparison of how, I guess it is all meant to be this way. We were in the Passean era, and that's man-made law era. Of course, we're stepping out of Passean, going into Aquarian. So I guess we're kind of stuck with the rides that it gave us. How do you see that? How do you see that? How it evolved, and how does it seem to be resolving itself in the current times?
Yeah, well, I think what we were just starting to touch on there was this template that some would call sacred union, right? That has kind of fallen apart. It's lost its rightful place of that true balance of the masculine and feminine, which needs to be an honoring, right, within that template. And I think what ended up happening was within this Council of Nicaea and, to the 4th and 6th centuries, there was a lot of separation and condemnation of women and taking them out of this public sphere and out of their roles as actual leaders and fearing like, no, women cannot be uplifted in that way. We need to say that they didn't actually have the power that they had. And so let's call them a repentant sinner or whatever names were given and take them out of their rightful place. And I think that metaphorically and also what happened to women at the time was, okay, the feminine is subservient. It doesn't have as much power as the masculine. Let's put it down so that men can be in power. And women were then, also abused through violence in that process.
Carry the sin of the world, so to speak.
What did you say?
Carrying the sin of the world, so to speak.
Right.
And such. So why Mary Magdalene? Because she represents something of carrying the sin of the world, but yet here she is for many people that are starting to get a renewed spiritual interest. And a lot of those people are going, Mary Magdalene really tells the story that I identify with. What do you see people gravitating to that draws them in? What drew you in?
Yeah, thank you for this powerful question. I feel the resonance within it. I mean, I think those are probably two-part answers between myself and the general, but I think in terms of what is so relatable about her is that we really feel her humanity through her story and the ways that she was cast aside or, not given her rightful place in society and not able to really shine as an empowered woman and also lost her beloved. And so there's many, the story of sorrow and of pain that she went through as well through this process with Yeshua. And I think that that's really relatable to a lot of people to see someone who's gone through so much struggle and suffering and in the end rose so far above it and was able to really step into her ministry, when she arrived in, at the time was called Gaul, southern France, and began to preach for the rest of her life and really teach these intimate pieces that were taught to her by Yeshua, in some of the quotes of the gospel and these later texts that were found, they speak to how she was like, they say Yeshua taught her things that he didn't teach to the other disciples, that she was the most favorite, the apostola apostolorum. And so she was really a beloved of his who was able to receive some of his deepest teachings and was given that gift to share with the world because he entrusted it to her.
Yeah. Well, one of the symbols in France that I see a lot, and maybe it's in American Catholic churches, I'm not for sure, I have not seen it, but it's the alpha to omega symbols. And you have the cross in between the alpha to omega. So what that means is it's the first and last letter of the Greek alphabet. And what it symbolically says is, and anybody will tell you this in France, it means that I know everything, that Jesus knows everything. But I heard a better version of that, but I really identify with it. Jesus is a whole person. And when we think about knowing to wholeness, wholeness is that you embody it all, that it's something intrinsically aligned with that. And when you bring up the story about what Jesus really taught Mary Magdalene, a lot of things that the apostles never got, she probably had an understanding that they were not getting. They were very manly. But Jesus as a whole person could understand the feminine and what the feminine meant at a level very few understood.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this, this really sharing of wisdom there.
Mm-hmm.
That she was the only person that could actually know it, receive it, and embody it. Just food for thought out there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that one of the main pieces that was within the Gospel of Mary and these other texts that were taken out by the churches and said burn and bury these, they shouldn't be seen, were all pointing towards the path of self-realization and what you're speaking to, the wholeness within, that we have what we need to awaken within ourselves, and we don't need to submit to these hierarchies or institutions that might be taking us away from our power, but we need to learn how to get in touch with that power. And when you ask me what brought me to her on my path and that connection, I didn't know it at the time, but she called me on a huge pilgrimage to go to the sacred sites of Europe without knowing where I was going. And immediately she showed up on the path. And that was my initiation to learn how to be my own guide and to really listen to my intuition every day, listen to the synchronicities, listen to the signs, and have no doubt and trust that you are being guided on your path. And that was a very profound shift in kind of fundamentally how I viewed reality, of recognizing that I was fully free and that I could choose whatever I needed at every moment of every day and release any other people's stories or impositions onto me. And from that, it was just the greatest joy and revelations and surprises and beauty that came within those following months, following this path that was being led like breadcrumbs all the way to the south of France to her caves. And it began a big journey. I think, I don't know if I said that was 2018. And so it was a big opening in my life of having a masculine teacher for many years that I was studying with for about 7 years. And then, okay, now is the era of the feminine in my own incarnation, and learning to now work with the feminine as this guide and also that energy of the rose, which I think she really taught me how to soften into that essence and to really receive.
So what is the rose? I mean, what is that to you? And why is the rose an important symbol? And maybe I just ask that you start with a kind of a generic understanding, but then maybe take it deeper where that has brought you.
Yeah, well, I feel that that's a topic I could speak on for hours and hours, most definitely.
You got about 12 minutes, but you
Yeah.
can cover it.
Well, I think number one, scientifically, it's been shown that roses have the highest frequency of all plants. that in their Hertz frequency, they're actually the most elevated. And so what does that speak to on our energy bodies? When we connect to the rose frequency, we are ascending in our own vibrational field. And so that's just kind of on the basic level. I feel that there are these gifts that were left here on earth for us to remember who we are and to connect to love and to that essence of the heart and the womb. And, you know, when I go into teachings of the rose, we go into the different colors and how each one has a different teaching within it. But another, just in connection to this lineage, you know, a lot of people speak of Magdalene's lineage as being the rose lineage or the lineage of the rose. And this dates pretty far back until, you know, ancient Egypt, when what I feel is connected to that is within the lineage of the Hathors and their connection to the planet Venus. And so within Venus, if anybody's ever seen what is called the Venus rose, not for coincidence, it actually has this kind of rose shape to it, and it is showing the trajectory of Venus over 8 years in its celestial orbit of the Earth. And it creates this amazing geometry, and that's connected to the rose. So the lineage is dating back into Egypt at this time when Venus was being honored. And even in astrology today, each planet has a plant, and the plant of Venus is the rose. And so this connection remains until today. And in their honoring of Venus, it's the Venusian pathway that was also birthed within this lineage of honoring beauty, honoring what is sacred, creating our lives in service to the divine, and being in that path of devotion and also full embodiment. And I think at that time it was more of a culture that was with the feminine being fully honored and being at the forefront. The goddess was a lot more revered in these ancient cultures, and we've kind of tilted the opposite way now. But at that time it was a lot about this goddess culture. And so the rose is also that symbol of the sacred feminine and of the softness that we all embody. And I could go in further, but you're welcome to ask him.
No, you're doing great. You know, it's. I think there's so many great points with that, with the complete cycle that the Venus goes around the Earth. It's so much about wholeness. And one of the ancient stories, really explained through symbology in France, is the 3 crescent moons, which really, to skinny it down, was Yeshua was the sun and Mary Magdalene was Venus. They complemented each other. But in my interpretation, this is personal, Venus represents all the applications you could create from an infinite source. And to me, that's so much what feminine consciousness is it applies, it builds, it grows, and of any possibility. And you think, oh, well, the masculine does that. Well, the masculine might have the hammer and the tools to get it done, but it all starts in the feminine. It's where the impetus is. And so I think that's what you're also saying, is that there's this infinite energy within the rose itself that we can start from.
Yeah, I think that what came up for me too is that people who feel a deep connection to the rose is not by chance. You know, people who really admire the rose and care for the rose, and the rose has always been associated with it's often associated with Mother Mary, and now it's coming back as the red rose of Magdalene. And I'd say Mother Mary's more of that pink, soft rose essence.
Yeah.
And also, you know, Yeshua with the crown of thorns being of the rose bush. Like, there's many symbols that have come through, and the Rosicrucian order. There are many historical lineages that are honoring the symbolism of the rose. And in some ancient churches, I remember one that I went to this summer in Glastonbury, there was a chapel with 2 images of roses on the wall, but they were 5-petaled roses. And roses obviously don't have 5 petals, but a lot of ancient symbolism of the rose is 5, and the Venus rose is also the 5-petaled rose.
Yep.
So it's interesting how a lot of what couldn't be kept as scripture and couldn't be seen and exposed to the public was put into symbolism and art through history. And when you start to learn that, I'm wearing some of the symbols here, the fleur-de-lis and the croix de Camargue, which is of southern France. When you start to learn what those symbols mean, you start to kind of develop a language and interpret what happened through history by seeing this, especially at sacred sites, right? When you go to them and you actually see, wow, it's right there. It's so thrilling to see the evidence of what's actually survived from our ancestors, and to really just feel that transmission directly from these places. And I know that you spent a lot of time in southern France as well, and it's just such a portal to that remembrance.
It is, and there's the energy to back it. But there are so many symbols, but also some that are so crude. And then when you go to the churches, they're more sophisticated, but they're all there, waiting to be rediscovered again, refelt. And it takes people that are aware to do that. And the one consistent thing, whether you're a man or a woman, is so much of it you have to go down into your womb space and start perceiving it from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a land of high initiates. I just want to say that as well, that these lands of southern France is not somewhere that you just step into and you have no idea what you're walking into. You're going to go through a lot if you choose to do that, and it might not all be easy. And the beings that walked there, who are nowadays referred to as the Cathars, they were also called the Parfaits, the perfected ones, and they were very high initiates that spent a lot of time cultivating these qualities within themselves. And for me, I just want to recommend to anybody who considers going to south of France to really begin your personal practice before you go on these journeys, because you will receive so much more, and you'll be so much more attuned when you start to really go within and learn this technology of your body, learn to receive what's there for you. Because when you go to places that amplify light, I also believe they will amplify your shadow. So you need to be ready to face what wants to come up, whether that's trauma or pain, so that you can really integrate this into your life and start to grow through that spectrum. And I don't think the shadow is something we need to negate or repress. I think it's something we need to embrace so that we can come back to wholeness.
Yeah, when you learn what that is, and learn to resolve it, you get a huge refocus of consciousness, because you've lost your tremendous negative weight in your body that's been there and created so many patterns. And this is what you do, is help people get through those things. And you can find out about KiaRa Santos through her website, rosetemple.org. And I think this is a great time to segue into, what's up for you? What are some of the projects? What are you offering out to people to come to be with you?
Yeah, I'd love to share about that. I mean, the big thing that's been in my heart and mind recently is what I call the Magdalene Mysterium, where we're really going into the mysteries of Mary Magdalene and the Rose lineage, and learning both the theology as well as the embodiment practices, and creating a community of like-minded sisters to really deepen into this. Because so many people I speak to say, Mary Magdalene came to me and I'm stepping out of these indoctrinated ways of seeing her, or even Jesus Christ, and I don't have the community to support this. And so a lot of people are craving that space to come together, and I think that's a really big pillar of what I've been guided to share, is places where we can really come together and feel that homecoming and know that we can just rest in that place of gnosis together. And the Mysterium is a 10-week journey that is online, so that the global sisters can join and really be connected no matter where they are. And it's also a preparation, as I was saying, for this pilgrimage that I'll be leading in July in the south of France, to become initiated in these different lands directly through the energies that are present and that were left for us by Magdalene and the Holy Family and Cathars and many other beings that we also talk about and learn through the course.
It sounds like you're going to be there maybe on Mary Magdalene's feast day, July 22nd.
Yes, yes, that will be the peak day of our retreat. We'll get to celebrate and be there in Rennes le Chateau. Not in the. A lot of people go to the seaport town, right, of Saint Baume and Saint de la Mer, but we will be more in the Cathar regions.
Yeah.
Really just spend a lot more time.
That's a great place to be and to go. However, around Rennes le Chateau, Pic de Bougueroche, the Cathar lands around Chateau Marc-Secure, and my favorite place, Grotte la Bethlehem, on the there's a wildness there that I don't see anyplace else in the world, and it's power spots. Some of them very few people know, but there's a lot of them. And a lot of them are in churches, and a lot of other places. Find them in the strangest places, but they're very much connected to something very ancient and very much what Mary Magdalene visited and probably did rituals at many of these places. And the more I uncover it, the more I find that they are.
Yeah.
So you can find us out at rosetemple.org. KiaRa Santos. All of that stuff is available. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just share one other rosebud that has come into my life is actually creating sacred geometries and objects and tools to support us in our path. And I share that on my website, www.therose.codes. So there's also tools that I've created to support people in their journey.
So this is another website.
Yeah.
Okay, say that again.
It's www.therose.codes.
Okay.
And those are tools and physical products that you can have to support you on your journey, and altars to Venus and to the Rose lineage, other pieces to support people.
Neat. Yeah, so we're coming down to the end of the show. We got about 2 minutes left. While you think of the question of what you would like to, what final wisdom would you like to impart, you'll have probably about a minute. While you're thinking of that, I'm going to let everybody know that you have been listening to Becoming Quantum Conscious. My name is Bart Sharp. Our guest today has been KiaRa Santos, and you can find her at rosetemple.org and rosecode.com. Get that right?
The rose.codes.
Okay, the rose.com. So thank you. You're also on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5 out in New Orleans, Louisiana. So KiaRa, what parting wisdom you have for the audience?
I think what this time is really calling for all of us is to turn within and start to really listen to the perhaps voices that have been calling us for a while that maybe now we're ready to listen to, and start to see what they're asking of us in our journey, in our healing, in embracing our pain, as well as really listening to our calling, to what is calling us into our next evolution, because I think there's a lot that's here for us to evolve into now, if we're willing to take those steps and to be steady and devoted in our path of healing.
Wonderful. Keep open, folks. Keep learning. Keep asking for more possibilities to learn more and embody that inside of you into your womb. Thank you so much for being on the show today, KiaRa.
Thank you so much, Bart. It's lovely to connect and get to share.
Yes, and I really thank you, and wish everybody a great week, and we will see y'all all next week. Bye-bye.